Hello, BookTube. I got some mail. No books, of course, but I did get some periodicals, it's the same periodical. I got the TLS, the London Times Literary Supplement, which is the greatest English language literary journal in the world. And I got, this was a rare instance. I'm always happy when it happens. I don't notice, so I'm always happy when it happens. And this is a time where I got I got the March 27th issue, and I got the April 3rd issue. I never know why that is. I always assume it's just because of a mistake, but it happens regularly, so maybe not. And I just picked these up, so I have no idea what is in them. I thought we'd go through them together and see what might be of interest. I haven't read anything here. The only thing that I've done so far with these is glance at the table of contents, because I want to know ahead of time. I want to warn myself ahead of time if the table of contents features anyone I hate. Writing the reviews or writing the book. I have to steel myself for that. And if it's some people, there are a couple of people where if they're in the table of contents, I have noticed in myself a propensity for simply putting the thing down. I just put the whole issue down and think, well, I really don't feel like even avoiding their prose. I really don't feel like doing anything connected with them. I don't feel like touching a journal that has their name on it. I'll get back to this in a while. And I've noticed that sometimes I don't, which is really bad, because it's only one or at most two pieces in an issue. But both of these issues are completely clear. So what I do is go through them. This one is the art issue, so it's bound to have less of interest to me. Probably a lot less stuff that I would even get in the mail, even if I still got books. But the back column, JC's NB column, is always worth reading. It's always rabble-rousing. And the letters page is always a lot of fun. Just see, let's look at the letters page for this, the March 27th issue. Features a response to that review of Rose Macaulay's that I read a bit of you to. An enthusiastic reader responding to that. Oh. Okay, great. I mentioned that Ben Hutchinson in an earlier issue that we went through together. Ben Hutchinson did an appreciation of the late George Steiner. And somebody writes in a letter. Somebody from Canberra writes in a letter. Canberra, what I've never been and will never be. I will never see Canberra. How amazing. Andrew Stewart writes in his essay on George Steiner, Ben Hutchinson notes, but did not elaborate, on Steiner's failure to obtain a permanent academic position at Cambridge. There does seem to have been a hostility to Steiner in parts of that academic establishment. At one time in the early 1960s, when I was an undergraduate at Christ's College, Cambridge, Graham Huff, a literary scholar and a fellow at Christ, came to lunch at our flat in London with my mother, Pamela Hansford Johnson, and my stepfather, C.P. Snow. The subject of Steiner, who was making a name for himself at Cambridge at the time, and was a friend of my mother and stepfather, arose. In the course of the discussion, Hope came out with the unexpected statement, quote, "The man's evil." We were all struck dumb by this bizarre, inaccurate, and unjust assertion. It took Snow some moments to collect himself and remonstrate. He said afterward that he could only conclude that the remark was motivated by anti-Semitism. Steiner, often a speaker of inconvenient truths, may have proved too rich a meal for the stomach of a provincial academic. My mother and stepfather were strong supporters of Steiner, whom they saw bringing a much-needed international perspective to the insularity of English letters. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm familiar with, I don't know, I'm not sure that Graham Hoff's name is pronounced Hoff or Hugh or Ho or something like that, but I am familiar with him. I think it's exactly right to call him a provincial academic. Boy, I assume that all these people are dead, so no one can defend them. no one can defend or elaborate. We're left with Andrew Stewart's recollection from his undergraduate days. Oh my. Oh boy, that might get a response. All right, so we continue with artwork. And when it's something like this where I am not going to read the books, I'm probably not going to get the books, the most that I will do in a case like that is note what things I want. If I see anything that I really want. The TLS has full color advertisements from publishers, and it has reviews of books that have not yet had an American release and might not have an American release. And I confess, I get a little bit covetous. But here we have A film review. More and more artwork. Good Lord. Oh, God help us. Podcasts. Okay, all right. Lucy Hughes Hallett reviews A Thousand Moons by Sebastian Barry. I'll have to see what she makes of it. I didn't quite know what to make of it myself. It seemed to me to be very, very much a sequel in all the wrong ways. I didn't get the impression that it stood on its own as a book at all. I mean, it's a continuation of cast of characters, but it should still stand on its own. This guy's a major literary talent. You don't need more than 5 pages to know that. So to write a book like this, I don't know. I'll have to go back to it if I ever get it. If I ever get another copy. Okay, then we have some general. Now see, when we get the poetry, Declan Ryan reviews "Frolic and Detour" by Paul Muldoon, which I don't think I got. I don't think I got it. I am a huge fan of Paul Muldoon, and I don't think I got "Frolic and Detour." Maybe I did. I'll have to see. I'll have to look and see. I will still have it. That's for sure. And then the poetry in brief, so a whole page of poetry. Study of 19th century literature. Study of... see, these are things that I don't... Oh, look at that. Jonathan Drummond reviews a book by Stephen Moss called The Accidental Countryside, Hidden Havens for Britain's Wildlife. Look at that. Oh my, me wanty. And this is exactly a thing. What is this? This is Faber, and this is exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. This will never be printed in America. And I want it. I want it without even reading the review. I want it without even reading the review. Oh man. Okay, then a full page review by Guy Strumsa of Karen Armstrong's latest book, The Lost Art of Scripture, which I passed on at the Monitor. I read it and didn't think there was any meat on the bone, so I didn't want it at all. Cultural Studies features 2 books, reviews of 2 books. One is City of Beasts, How Animals Shaped Georgian London, and the other is Political Lives of Victorian Animals, Liberal Creatures in Literature and Culture. I would love to read both of those. And they're historical studies of animals in 2 different British time periods, so they might never get printed in America either. Okay, then we have the reviews in brief. Will all be stuff that I don't know, and that is it. Aside from JC, that is it. And then we move on to the next one. I don't know if any of this is of interest to you, but I miss opening my mail with you. This is the April 3rd issue. It has Einstein on the cover, so this might be science. This might be a science issue. No, it's not. Doesn't appear to have. It looks like, if anything, the stress is on archaeology and architecture. But what have we got here? The Cambridge edition of the novels and stories of Thomas Hardy. Never been a huge Hardy fan. Probably won't. A full color ad for a new Penguin classic. Sand County Almanac. Aldo Leopold. Look at that. Oh my God. Sand County Almanac and sketches here and there. There's going to be a Penguin classic of Sand County Almanac. How incredible. Oh my, I want it right now. I want it right now. Oh, I don't know that it'll ever be available in America, and maybe I should just go online and see if like I said in my last video, I'm still unclear on what the state of ordering books online is. Are you having any luck doing it? I set aside a chunk of money for buying books online. Now, I just assumed, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I just assumed that all that money would be spent on electronic books, because I assumed there would be no shipping of physical printed books. But if I was wrong about that, I'd much rather spend that money on printed books. Are you having any luck getting books in the mail? Are you ordering books and having them arrive? I'm perfectly happy to assiduously disinfect. But, okay, all right. Okay, I was right. that George Steiner letter accusing him of being anti-Semitic got a response. It got a couple of responses. Let's see what we have here. Okay, Patrick Parender, writing from London, says, as someone who was a student of both Graham Huff's Cambridge colleges in the early 1960s, I must write to defend him against Andrew Stewart's accusations of anti-Semitism. Nor was Huff, who had taught for many years in Singapore and spent most of the war as a prisoner of the Japanese, by any stretch a, quote, provincial academic. Okay, all right, okay. I admired George Steiner in the 1960s, and I still do, but he was a difficult man with a quick and was quick to both give and take offense. In 1964-65, I invited Steiner to Christ College to lecture to our literary society, and, no doubt at all too innocently, asked for some prior indication as to what he would be speaking about. Not only was no reply forthcoming, but he began the lecture by announcing that he was going to say exactly what he liked, quote, despite your chairman's attempt to muzzle me. Not exactly evil, but certainly enough to put one's back up. Okay. Okay. Okay, I noticed that that's not actually defense against an accusation of anti-Semitism. I mean, I think Patrick Parender well refutes the accusation of him as being provincial. But I wonder if that's an omission or if that's really damning. That isn't a defense against anti-Semitism. It's saying, well, sure, he could be a jerk. That's okay. Okay. All right. So Josh Cohen writes. An appreciation of Beyond the Pleasure Principle. Beyond the Pleasure Principle is 100 years old. Wow, that's going to be a tricky piece to do. I wouldn't want to do it. Okay, then a long roundup of biographies of Einstein. That would be fascinating. And then, oh man, a long roundup of NASA-related moon landing books. Oh my, I did that last year. I'll be happy to read someone else do it. Okay, all right, and then we have a long list of TLS contributors writing about what they're reading during isolation, during quarantine. This is going to be a familiar thing. This is what periodicals like this are going to go to their stable of writers for that. This won't be the only one of these that I read. So we have Mary Beard, we have Claire Carlisle, Lee Child, Margaret Drabble. All these people, just goes on and on. Sarah Moss. Emily Wilson, Larry Wolf, all these people going on about what they're reading while they're in isolation. It'd be fun to read, I'm sure. When I read things like this, collections like this, they do one for the end of the year when writers look back on the best books that they read that year. I always look for commonalities. I look to see if anybody, because the writers don't consult with each other, so I always look to see if anybody's looking into the same thing, if the same title is coming up. Oh my, okay. All right, Alexander Van Tulliken does a piece called The Kangaroo Curve about the Boris Johnson government's response to the coronavirus. And this is a perfect example of how we are living in fast-footed historical times, because this was written before the latest turn in the Boris Johnson story, which is that he's been moved to intensive care. He's not responding to treatment. And when this piece was written, he had not yet been diagnosed with COVID-19. He now has been. And when this piece was written, he had not then been brought to the hospital, and he now has been. And when this piece was written, he had not then failed to respond to treatment and been moved to intensive care. All of that has now happened. Boris Johnson may well be the first head of state to die of this disease. Once you move into intensive care, it's all hands on deck. It's not you're moving into intensive care, I guess we'll see you back at home in a week. You're moving into intensive care because we're not sure we can save you. That's the kind of thing that you just can't. That's why reading books on the current era, or especially books on public health, feels so antediluvian now. I mean, they're all out of date. All Trump books are out of date. Everything like this is out of date because we're living through an event that will be mentioned in history books forever. Wow, okay. Okay, then we have, let's see here. Oh my. There's another piece on arts in this one. This whole issue is not devoted to art, but there's a piece on art here by Michael Hall on British Baroque art, which I just love. Absolutely love it. Oh God. Oh God. Okay. All right. Michael Lapointe. does a very long review of Cleanness by Garth Greenwell. And I just know what will be in it already. I mean, I'll read it, of course, and I'll clip it out, and I'll fold it up and stick it in my copy of the book. But I already know what I'm going to read. That this is the second coming of Jesus Christ. That this is the greatest novel that's ever been written. That the author will say this is certainly the greatest gay novel that's ever been written. It easily surpasses the previous title holder, which was whatever Garth Greenwell wrote last. when invariably it turns out that the reviewer who is spewing that kind of nonsense has never read any gay fiction, or has only read Call Me by Your Name. And in that they have that alone, they have that alone in common with Garth Greenwell, who has also not read any of this genre that he's now self-elected pope of. So this is just going to be Sally Rooney all over again. I will read it, of course. I will read it. But then we have a double-page spread of fiction, an excerpt from a forthcoming literary work. There's a new book on Pindar. Wow, this is Johns Hopkins University. Oh, okay, so I could get that, maybe. Maybe I could. If they're still mailing out books, I could get that. It's not a translation. It's just about it. A book on Victorian children's literature. Oh, wow. Oh, there's a new biography by Pen and Sword, so I might not get it. It's called The Author Who Outsold Dickens. It's a life of W.H. Ainsworth. Does anybody know W.H. Ainsworth? I read his book on Windsor Park, his book on the Tower of London. I love them. Absolutely love them. They're so bad. They're just so bad. So this will be a whole article on Ainsworth. Oh my. Somebody's trying to revive his reputation as a literary figure. Boy, good luck with that. He's so bad. But back once upon a time when the Brattle Bookshop was open here in Boston, it was such a wonderful bookstore that I could occasionally go and find on the dollar carts an Ainsworth book. That's how I read him. I would never dream of going online and to some collector's site and getting a copy for $50. No, that's how I did it, because I came across it at random at the Brattle and just gobbled it right up. That was back when the Brattle was open. Let's see here. Then we have, in brief, Rowan Williams, a collection of essays by Rowan Williams on the way of St. Benedict. Never cottoned to Rowan Williams as a writer. I'd rather have Jason at Byways and Bookland write a book on the way of St. Benedict. I would pay money for that. And that is it. Then we have a final essay, the From the Archive essay I love the feature in the TLS. Sometimes it distracts me, but I love the feature where they will reprint something from their archives that is connected thematically with something in the issue. And here they're reprinting an older review of a biography of Albert Einstein to sort of round out the issue. So that's great. That's a lot of good reading and some irritating reading to come. The Garth Greenwell review I know is going to irritate me, but a lot of it won't. And I'll read through every word of these things, and then I will pull out the pieces that I'm going to save and put them somewhere. I will home them somewhere. I will not just pull them out and put them in a file where I'm never going to look at them or even remember how to find them. Instead, I will pull out the pieces that are connected either directly because they're a review of a particular book, and I'll stick it in that book, or indirectly. Like, for instance, that review of a book of a new textual analysis of the Odes of Pindar, I would probably just put in my copy of that author. Because I don't think I'll ever get the actual book, but I might want to. Well, every time I'll open the book, I'll find that review, and so on and so forth, right down the line with all the different. There's only two things that I'm going to just look. I promise. I won't buy. I will just look. That book about unexpected nature havens for British wildlife, and the Penguin Classic of Aldo Leopold. Oh my God, I want both of those, and I want them right now. I will just look. I will just look and see what's available. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'd love to hear if you're getting books. How are you getting books? I'd love to hear about that, because I haven't explored it myself. I've been busy writing all day long, and every time I took a break, every time I lifted my myself out of the sheer joy of writing. It was to spend non-English, non-verbal time with my little bean. So I have not explored anything today. I'd love to hear it from you anyway. So I'm going to wrap this up. That was mail, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.